Everyone, today we're going through the 7 levels of SAT English. The lowest score is a 400 if you get every single question wrong, so don't get a 400. And the max score is a 800 where you need to be nearly flawless. Okay, so just like the SAT math video, how the rule is going to work is for each level you can get 2 questions. If you get none of those questions right, you fail and you cannot advance. But you can keep watching the video if you want. If you get 1 out of 2, you do advance to the next level, but that's kind of mid because you're really aiming for 2 out of 2 on each level to really master that level. So see how far you can get. Also, if you guys are preparing for the March SAT or any future SAT, make sure you check out our free full SAT prep course on YouTube with over 200 plus questions. And lastly, you guys should subscribe to our free weekly newsletter where we're going to be dropping tips every single week on how to score 1500 plus on your SAT, lists of curated summer programs, extracurriculars, college admissions secrets, and all that mumbo jumbo. So if you want access to that, make sure you click the first link in the description. And let's get into the video. All right, starting at level 1, it says, as used in the text, what does the word spread most nearly mean? It says it was a huge zoo spread over numberless acres, big enough to require a train to explore it, though it seemed smaller as I grew older, train included. Okay, so A, hidden. Well, if it's super big, why would it be hidden? So it's not A. Discussed makes no sense. C, extended. That's the answer because extend means like prolonged. So if you got a huge zoo, I mean, it's extended across numerous acres. That makes the most sense, and D makes no sense either. So let's move on. It says Valia is a 1907 short story by this person. In the story, the author emphasizes that the setting where the character is reading is nearly silent. Okay, so see, this one says the hand, blah, blah, gets stiff and cold. Makes no sense. Has nothing to do with silence in the setting. This one says that they were reading a huge book, but that doesn't do anything with the setting, so it's not B. C says they approached the window and examined the toys. Literally nothing, so it's not C. And D says everything in the room is quiet, so yeah. It at least says quiet right there. I mean, it's as explicit as it gets, so the answer must be D. Alright, so we're moving on to the next level. It says, according to the text, which piece of the Vila's art was on display in the Peterson Automotive Museum in 2017? Well, this one, you just got to read in the text and find it. It says right here, I see 2017 right in the question, and I see in 2017, they created an impressive life-size pinata-like structure of the Gypsy Rose lowrider car. And that matches up with answer choice B, so that's our answer. Let's move on. So it says about 70,000 meteorites have been found on Earth, though most meteorites are fragments of blank. 100 have been identified as being from the moon or Mars. Which choice completes the text that conforms to the conventions of standard English? Okay, so let's get to the technical explanation. We have, although most meteorites are fragments of something, something, that is a dependent clause. And then we can see that in all of our answer choices, we have the choice several. So we can imply that the sentence after that, or the part of the sentence after that, is going to be several hundred have been identified as being from the moon or Mars. That is the independent clause, right? If you read that, that's a complete sentence. So the technical terms here is that if you have a dependent clause, which is what we have here, and then following it, we have an independent clause, then you have to use a comma between that. Okay, so the answer choice here is also B. Now, honestly, you could just read through it, right? Just, though most meteorites are fragments of asteroids, comma, several hundred, blah, blah, blah. Just read it. Whichever one makes the most sense here for these grammar questions is probably the right answer. All right, moving on to level 3, the question says, which choice best states the main idea of the text? So let's just read this. It says, in West Africa, jails have been traditionally been keepers of, been keepers of information about family histories and records of important events. They have served as teachers and advisors too. New technologies may have changed some aspects of the world today, but jails continue to be valued for knowing and protecting their people's stories. Okay, my thing is bugging, but anyways, let's read the answer choices. A says, even though there have been some changes to their role, so this first part is correct because it says, new technologies may have changed some aspects of their role today. And the second part says, jails continue to preserve their community's histories. Let's think to ourselves, is that true? Well, that is true because right here it says, jails have traditionally been keepers of information about family histories and records of important events. That sounds like community history to me, right? So A right there is our answer choice there. All right, let's move on. It says, blah, blah. Oh, so we have a rhetorical synthesis question. So if you don't know the hack for these is you just don't read this. I mean, there are a couple questions recently in the SAT where you do actually have to read this because some of the answer choices contradict to each other, but most of the time you can just read what this is and find the answer choice without reading all this, BS up here. So it says the student wants to emphasize a similarity between the Choctaw code talkers and the Navajo code talkers. Which choice most effectively uses relevant information about the notes to accomplish this goal? So you have information up here, and then you have to pick the choice that relates to it in the answer choices. So we want to emphasize a similarity. Okay, if we look at our answer choices, the only one that emphasizes a similarity is answer choice C. It says both the Choctaw code talkers and the Navajo code talkers transmitted coded military messages in the soldiers' native languages, and so C there must be our answer. In response to adverse environmental conditions, many plants produce something acid, ABA, a stress hormone. ABA triggers a slowdown in the biological processes of most plants. Blank, when the mustard plant something, I'm not going to read that, produces ABA in response to environmental stressor, the hormone triggers accelerated growth. Which choice or transition completes the text with the most logical transition? Okay, pause the video, try it for yourself. And yeah, let's get solving. So the first thing I'm going to cross out is A, because when you use the transition moreover, it suggests that you're adding similar information. But in this case, it's the complete opposite. Okay, now I'm also going to eliminate choice D, because when you use thus, that means you're you're essentially applying that there's a logical consequence as a result, right? But this sentence, it acts more like a contradiction rather than a cause and effect relationship. And that's going to make sense once we get into the nitty-gritty detail of the right answer and how that shows the correct answer there. I'm also going to eliminate C, for example. Okay, well, that's incorrect because the mustard plant is not an example of the general trend, right? If we actually read in context, we can see that the stress hormone ABA, it triggers a slowdown in the biological processes of most plants, right? So if we had the for example transition, what we would expect is an example of something that slows down their biological processes as a result of ABA. But in this case, it says triggers accelerated growth in our mustard plant, right? Therefore, the right answer must be in contrast, right? Because in contrast basically says that it's signaling an unexpected difference in how this whatever mustard plant actually responds to ABA compared to most other plants. It's a contrast, right? You're comparing the two things. And so that's why B is the correct answer. All right, so this SAT question says, having written the impassioned call to arms letter to the Spanish Americans in 1791, Peruvian intellectual Juan Pablo Vizcarra y Guzman is often considered a forerunner for the independence movements in Latin America, but Vizcarra's role in history would have remained insignificant were it not for Venezuelan revolutionary Francisco de Miranda, who was handed the unpublished letter after Vizcarra's death. Miranda not only helped circulate the letter, but his edits and footnotes to the text position Miranda as a central figure in the text creation. Okay, so kind of manipulative, not gonna lie. So which choice best states the main idea of the text? Okay, I'm gonna make this one nice and quick. The correct answer here is going to be C. Okay, so it says Miranda played a crucial role in influencing the content and distribution of Letter to the Spanish Americans. This one I think is kind of obvious, right? So this guy Miranda gets handed the unpublished letter of Letter to the Spanish Americans, right, from this original author, Juan Pablo Vizcarra y Guzman. And then after his death, Miranda not only helped circulate the letter, so if we're looking at answer choice C, he plays a crucial role in the distribution of the letter. So it really says here, help circulate the letter. And he also put his own edits and footnotes to position himself as a central figure in the text creation. And therefore he had a huge role and influence on actually changing or influencing not changing the content, but like actually influencing content to the letter to Spanish Americans. It's cliched imagery of suburban lawns and power lines. John Ashbery's 2004 poem, Ignorance of the Law is No Excuse, may seem barren terrain for critical analysis. Blank transition. Cultural critic Lauren Berlant finds fertile ground in just its first two stanzas, devoting most of a book chapter to deciphering the weight of the default space Ashbery creates in this poem. So which choice completes the text with the most logical transition? Okay, nice and quick and easy here. It's going to be choice B. Now, why? Well, because the first sentence here suggests that Ashbery's poem, it's like unworthy of deep analysis, right? It literally says it's like barren terrain for critical analysis. But so it contradicts, the next sentence contradicts the statement by saying that this Lauren Berlant is able to find fertile ground or something that's rich to analyze, right? So nonetheless, effectively is going to signal this contrast. Let's look at the other answer choices. We got A, likewise. That's not true because likewise is something that's similar. This is like the complete opposite contradiction. Can't be A. C, in turn, can't be that either because that suggests it's like in sequence or as a consequence of, not a contrast. Indeed, that's also wrong. That signals something that's like a clarification or restatement. This is, again, a complete opposite. It's not like restating, oh yeah, it is barren. It's a contradiction, it's a contrast, and therefore B is our correct answer. Essentially, it boils down to researchers studying the Terracotta Army, and then when they're looking at the tomb and the soldiers, they realize that the shape of each of the statue's ears is just like the shape of each person's ears, blank blank, unique. Okay, so pause the video, try and answer the question yourself, and we're going to reveal the answer now. So a couple things. First off, all this up here, right, we're shocked. You can tell that it's in the past tense. But now when we get down here, when we're talking about the shape of the statue's ears, because that is like scientific, a general truth, that means we have to be talking in the present tense now, right? So whatever choice we have here has to be in the present tense. And then we also have to note the subject of the verb. The subject of the verb here is the shape, and the shape is singular. So anything that's plural cannot be the choice. So R-A cannot be the choice, that's plural. C, were, that is also plural, cannot be it. And now we're down to B and D. Have been is in the wrong tense. Have been is not the present tense, and therefore we're left with choice B as our answer. All right, so today's hard level SAT English question actually has a nice table for you, okay? So it's Swahili speakers in 3 African countries. Our little blurb here says Swahili is estimated to be the first language of up to 15 million people worldwide. It's also an officially recognized language in Tanzania, Kenya, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which means these countries use Swahili in government documents and proceedings. But even in countries where almost everyone speaks Swahili, for many it isn't their first language, but is instead their second, third, or even fourth language. Okay? So make sure you have this table in mind when we read the question, which says, which choice most effectively uses data from the table to support the underlying claim? Okay, so those are your answer choices. Keep those in mind. You need to support the underlying claim, which is right here, but even in countries to even fourth language. Okay, so pause the video, try and answer the question on your own. And yeah, so the answer here is going to be A. Okay, Tanzania has approximately 61 million Swahili speakers, which is much more than the estimated total number of people worldwide for whom Swahili is their first language. Okay, so you can see here in the table, it says approximate number of speakers in millions is 61 million in Tanzania. So it's estimated that 100% of their population speaks Swahili. And the claim here is that even in countries where almost everyone speaks Swahili, so 100%, that's like almost anyone, almost everyone, right? So that fits that part of the claim. And the second part is that for many, it isn't their first language, but is instead their second, third, or even fourth language. Okay, it says Swahili is estimated to be the first language of up to 15 million people. So worldwide, there's about 15 million people where Swahili is their first language. But in Tanzania, where everybody speaks Swahili, you have 61 million people. That means you have millions of people who, sure, know Swahili, but it isn't their first language. It must be their second, third, or fourth language. And therefore, A here is our correct answer. In 1916, Sykes disputed claims that The Two Noble Kinsmen was co-authored by William Shakespeare and John Fletcher. Sykes felt Fletcher's contributions to the play were obvious. Fletcher had a distinct style in his other plays, so much so that lines with that style were considered sufficient evidence of Fletcher's authorship. But for lines not deemed to be by Fletcher, Sykes felt that their depiction of women indicated that their author was not Shakespeare, but actually this guy named Philip Massinger. I butchered that. All right, text 2 says scholars have accepted The Two Noble Kinsmen as co-authored by Shakespeare since the 1970s. So this takes a very different approach to text 1. They obviously don't agree there. It appears in all major one-volume editions of Shakespeare's complete works. Though scholars disagree about who wrote what exactly, it is generally held that on the basis of style, Shakespeare wrote all of the first act. So Shakespeare wrote all of the first act and most of the last, while John Fletcher authored most of the middle 3 acts. Okay, so here's the question. It says, based on the texts, both Sykes in text 1 and the scholars in text 2 would most likely agree with which statement? All right, so pause the video and try and solve the problem on your own. So I'm going to immediately eliminate a couple answers. First off, we're going to eliminate answer choice D. Why? Well, because this guy, Philip Massinger's actual involvement is never mentioned specifically for the first or last acts, okay? The only time that he's actually mentioned is for the depiction of women, right? So the indication of the style was not actually Shakespeare, but actually this guy named Philip. The next answer choice I'm going to cross out is letter C, okay? So it says the two noble kinsmen belong in a one-volume compilations of Shakespeare's complete plays. So here's the thing. Skykes actually disputes, right? We talked about it before. In text 1, Skykes actually disagrees with text 2 about Shakespeare's involvement for the two noble kinsmen, right? So in text 2, it says it appears in all major one-volume editions of Shakespeare's complete works. So that's like a consensus in the 1970s, right? But back here in 1916, this guy Skykes, he disputes claims that the two noble kinsmen was co-authored by William Shakespeare. So if Skykes doesn't think that Shakespeare, co-authored it, why would he believe that it deserves to be in a all major one-volume edition of Shakespeare's complete works? It wouldn't be his complete works if he didn't even co-author it, right? All right, the next answer choice we're crossing out is B, okay? Well, why? Well, because there's no comparison that is made between Fletcher's and Massinger's woman characters, okay? So there's nothing here. It only says that depictions of women would have been B because of Massinger. Just does not go into detail about the actual specific styles. It just says that the style is more of Philip Massinger's than the other guy. That leaves us with the correct answer of A. John Fletcher's writing has a unique, readily identifiable style. And why is that? Well, in text 1, we can see here that it is explicitly said that, where is it? It says Fletcher has a distinct style, right? So John Fletcher's style has a unique, readily identifiable style. Yes, it literally says he has a distinct style right here. And in text 2 at the bottom, we can see that they're able to differentiate who wrote what parts of the act, right? Shakespeare wrote all of the first act and most of the last. And because of John Fletcher's unique style, they're able to tell that, this guy probably wrote most of the middle 3 acts. Many mosquito repellents contain natural components that work by activating multiple odor receptors on mosquitoes' antennae. As the insects develop resistance, new repellents are needed. Keydong and her team found that EBF, molecular component of the flower extract, can repel mosquitoes by activating just one odor receptor, and this receptor, OR31, is present in all mosquito species known to carry diseases. Very cool. Therefore, the researchers suggest that in developing new repellents, it would be most useful to what? And the question asks which choice most logically completes the text. Pause the video and try to answer the question by yourself. So the correct answer here is going to be A, all right? So why is it the answer choice of A? Well, because you have to think. So it is stated in the thing that this EBF, right, this molecular component from the flower, is very effective at repelling mosquitoes. Now, why? Well, it's because it specifically activates that OR31 receptor, right, which is common to all disease-carrying species, as is stated in the text right here. And so the next logical step for researchers who want to develop new repellents, because if you have this EBF that targets OR31, that's cool and all, right? But the mosquitoes can develop, resistance, right? So you're always going to need to develop new repellents. But when you develop new repellents, you want the ones that will affect the most mosquitoes at once. So if all the mosquitoes have this OR31 receptor and you can create one repellent that works on all of them, that's cool, right? So now the next step is to find, or invest in repellent development to find similar molecules to the EBF that would also just target the OR31 receptors, because the OR31 receptors are in all mosquitoes, right? Because if you find 50 different alternatives, just like EBF, then you can make 50 different repellents, right? And then you can stave off the mosquitoes for a lot longer. So that's why A is the correct answer. Let's look at the other answer choices. B says investigate alternative methods for extracting EBF molecules. Not the correct answer here because the passage focuses on developing new repellents. It says, therefore, the researchers suggest that in developing new repellents, right, not just relying on the EBF molecules, so it can't be B. C says verify the precise location of OR31 and other odor receptors on mosquitoes' antenna. That's incorrect because while OR31's presence is important, the passage still, they want to develop new repellents, not continue to study these different types of receptors, because they know, okay, OR31 is this one receptor in all these mosquitoes. That's cool and all. We don't need to find new odor receptors on the mosquito's antenna. So that's not the choice. And D says determine the maximum number of different odor receptors that can be activated by a single molecule. Again, passage, the passage is talking about developing new repellents, not, Also it's talking about targeting one odor receptor, which is OR31. And so that is like the foundation of building new repellents. And then this answer choice D is talking about the maximum number of different odor receptors. So we're not trying to maximize receptor activation or the number of receptors we're activating. We just want the one that's widespread in every single mosquito, and therefore it can't be D.
We have linguist Deborah Tannen has cautioned against framing contentious issues in terms of two highly competitive perspectives, such as pro versus con. According to Tannen, this debate-driven approach can strip issues of their complexity, and when used in front of an audience, can be less informative than the presentation of multiple perspectives in a non-competitive format. To test Tannen's hypothesis, students conducted a study in which they showed participants one of three different versions of local news commentary about the same issue. So first off, I just want to point something out, is that instead of the typical two perspectives that you would expect, because you have here, you're framing it as two highly competitive perspectives, right? Which is this debate-driven approach. And then the other side here is the multiple perspectives in a non-competitive format. However, the rest of the text here you can see deciphers another version, right? So they conducted this study where they showed one participant three different versions. There's three different versions when we were only introduced to two. So, what could the third version be? Let's keep reading. The local news commentary about the same issue. Each version featured a debate between two commentators with opposing views, a panel of three commentators with various views, or a single commentator. So I'm going to say this right now, guys. This debate between two commentators, that is the highly competitive perspective. That a panel of three commentators with various views, just because they have various views does not mean they're debating. That is tapping right into the multiple perspectives part in a non-competitive format, right? Because we're literally getting a panel instead of a debate. But now the distractor here is a single commentator, so we have to look out for that in our answer choices. So A says, on average, participants perceive the commentators in the debate as more knowledgeable about the issue than commentators in the panel. So that directly does not even speak to the actual argument made, because this is getting a little messy, so let me just erase some things here. It says, according to Tannen, the debate-driven approach can strip issues of their complexity and can be less informative to the audience. So not only does A not even talk about it being informable to the audience, it's just saying that the audience perceives the people in the debate to be more knowledgeable. That doesn't mean they've gained any new information, right? And so it can't be A. B says, on average, participants perceived commentators in the panel as more knowledgeable about the issue than the single commentator. So this is weird now because you're comparing the panel, the multiple perspectives, to the single commentator. But the single commentator is not what the original claim was being made against, right? So the original claim was against the debate-driven approach, not the single commentator. So a single commentator can't be debating themselves, right? So it cannot be B. C says, on average, participants who watched the panel correctly answered more questions than the issue about the issue than those who watched the debate or the single commentator did. Well, here, let's see what we have. We have people who watched the panel, right? So the panel is the multi-perspective approach, answered more questions about the issue correctly than those who watched either the debate or the single commentator. So therefore, we already have supporting evidence here because first off, it's supporting the side with the panel of multiple perspectives, but it's also knocking against the debate side, right? Because we want evidence that the debate strips issues of their complexity and also is less informative for the audience. And so if people are answering questions more correctly on the panels as compared to the debate, then that is strong evidence, and therefore answer is C.